Greetings friends, you are watching the Ruslan Belov channel. Today we will conduct a detailed breakdown of the situation in Ukraine as of December 23, 2025. Over the past 24 hours, several extremely significant events have taken place, so let us move straight into the briefing without delay. We begin with another large-scale wave of strikes carried out during the night of December 22 and 23, 2025. From early morning onward, both pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian sources began publishing operational maps showing the estimated flight paths of Russian unmanned aerial vehicles and missile systems. Based on these schematics, it can be concluded that several hundred drones and dozens of missiles of various types were employed over the course of the night. According to the available data, the primary concentration of strikes fell on southwestern Ukraine, first and foremost on Odesa Oblast. In addition, attacks were recorded along the line of contact in the areas of Pokrovsk, Konstantinovka, and Kramatorsk. Strikes were also carried out against targets in western regions of the country. Odesa Oblast, without question, deserves special attention. Based on the maps published today, this region was also subjected to strikes. It can be assumed that the main targets were settlements and cities located along the Danube River, particularly Izmail and Reni. At this time, however, no objective control footage from these specific locations has been released. At the same time, it is well known that in recent weeks, the Russian military has placed increased operational focus on this sector. Previously, strikes were primarily directed at the bridge in the area of Mayaki, as well as at key elements of the regional energy infrastructure, especially electrical substations. Today, video footage from Odesa Oblast was published. It is important to clarify, however, that these are not the immediate consequences of the December 23rd night strikes, but rather the results of attacks carried out earlier. The footage shows an electrical substation that is either largely or partially destroyed. Nevertheless, the most noteworthy material comes from the Mayaki area, specifically the bridge on the M15 highway. Local residents are filming the aftermath of the strikes, more precisely, the results of emergency repair efforts conducted by municipal and technical services. We can see that these services attempted, at the very least, to partially stabilize the situation. Damaged sections were fenced off or marked to prevent vehicles or pedestrians from falling into craters formed by drone or missile impacts during nighttime hours. At the same time, it must be emphasized that only a portion of the bridge is being shown publicly. There is no footage from alternative angles, which significantly complicates an objective assessment of the true scale of the damage. However, if we refer to earlier phases of the special military operation and the conflict in Ukraine as a whole, such situations are already familiar. A comparable scenario was observed in 2022 in Kherson Oblast, when strikes were carried out against the Antonivsky Bridge. The sequence was nearly identical. First, the bridge was riddled with impact craters from HIMARS strikes. Later, traffic across the bridge was completely halted. Communication with Kherson was maintained using barges and other watercraft. This was followed by evacuation and ultimately by the complete demolition of the bridge by Russian forces during withdrawal. Based on the current situation, it is reasonable to assume that in the coming days, the probability of the complete destruction of the bridge near Mayaki remains extremely high, with all traffic across it potentially cut off entirely. Temporary crossings may be under construction, but it remains unclear how significantly they can alter the operational situation in this sector. If we draw an interim conclusion, it becomes clear that the Russian side is fundamentally shifting its strike strategy across Ukraine. The primary focus is now on critical logistics nodes and power supply infrastructure. And judging by current developments, this is only the opening phase of a new operational stage. We now move directly to the line of contact. Over the past day, a massive flow of information has been received. However, the most critical updates are coming from the Zaporizhia direction, where Russian forces continue to press their offensive. We begin with the Kharkiv sector. Today, highly significant video footage was released from this direction, material that had been anticipated for quite some time. The footage shows FPV drone strikes conducted by Ukrainian operators against positions of the Russian armed forces located on the territory of a former women's correctional colony. The importance of these images cannot be overstated. Earlier, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that Mala-Tokmachka had come under Russian control, yet no visual confirmation had been released for an extended period. While many cartographers adjusted their maps based on indirect indicators, direct evidence was awaited. Today, the first video emerged suggesting that the former women's colony is likely partially or fully under Russian control. This is a critical development for understanding the current tactical situation in this sector. We now shift to the eastern Zaporizhia direction, specifically the area of Huliaipole. Here, the map has undergone major changes over the past 24 hours. As recently as yesterday, approximately 25% of the city was assessed to be under Russian control, another 25% classified as a grey zone, and the remaining 50% controlled by Ukrainian forces. Today, the situation has changed dramatically. Updated data indicates that more than 50% of Huliaipole is now under Russian control, roughly 10% remains contested, and about 40% is still held by Ukrainian forces. These adjustments are based on a combination of sources, including video footage released by the Ukrainian side. One such video shows multiple strikes against Russian positions, with several impacts successfully geolocated, one at a specific point and another in the area of 1st of May Street. These objective control materials form the basis for the map corrections. Neutral cartographic services have also adjusted their assessments, particularly in the central and southern parts of the city. We take these reports into account as well. As a result, it is increasingly evident that Russian forces are continuing their systematic advance. At this point, there is little doubt that the objective is to conclude the battle for Huliaipole before the start of 2026. This explains the extreme intensity of operations in this sector, with a clear timeline aimed at December 31st, 2025. Additional updates are coming from the northern sector, from the bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the Haicha River. The Russian Ministry of Defense, along with the command of the Vostok troop grouping, reported a significant improvement in Russian positions near the settlement of Andriivka. Video footage was also released, showing the course of combat operations in this area. The footage demonstrates a full sequence of actions, including artillery preparation, aerial bomb strikes, followed by the advance of assault units and intensive FPV drone operations. In the final moments of the video, Russian servicemen can be seen raising the Russian national flag in various parts of Andriivka. Based on this footage, official Ministry of Defense reports, statements from the Vostok grouping, and data from neutral cartographic services, substantial changes have been made to the map. While the control line looked different on December 21, 2025, by December 22, experts noted improved Russian positions in the southern part of the settlement. By the end of December 23, a major correction reflected a significant shift in the operational situation. It is now becoming clear that the next likely objective for Russian forces is the settlement of Bratska. An advance toward this target may be conducted simultaneously from the south, east, and northeast. If successful, Bratsky would become the third settlement on the Ukrainian bank of the Haicha River with confirmed and stable Russian control. In summary, we are observing the methodical expansion and consolidation of a bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the Haicha River, and it is precisely from this sector that the main strike of the 2026 campaign is most likely to be launched. We now move on to the Pokrovsk sector of the front. As we discussed earlier, following the completion of a regrouping in the area of the settlement of Slavianka, the Ukrainian side launched counterattacking actions toward the city of Pokrovsk. Over the past 24 hours, objective control footage has been regularly appearing in open sources, documenting repeated attempts by Ukrainian mechanized columns to breach the defenses of the Russian armed forces and penetrate the northwestern part of Pokrovsk. The equipment does in fact reach the designated lines, and a wide range of vehicles is being used, including tanks. After entering the target areas, the vehicles are typically abandoned. Infantry units disperse, take cover, and occupy positions. At that point, Russian FPV drones enter the engagement and systematically destroy the abandoned equipment. The majority of these episodes are recorded specifically in the northwestern sector of Pokrovsk. This provides grounds to assume that certain Ukrainian units may have managed to infiltrate this area and even achieve temporary footholds. As I have stated before, the Ukrainian command appears focused on securing at least some presence within Pokrovsk's urban area before the end of the year, primarily to generate video footage and claim so-called media victories, rather than to achieve decisive operational success. At the same time, reports are emerging of Russian advances in the area of the settlement of Huliaipole. These developments are being reported today by several pro-Russian cartographic resources and military analysts. Meanwhile, there is currently almost no new information regarding the situation in Myronohrad. Overall, the picture that has emerged over the past several days is highly indicative. After a prolonged operational pause, likely tied to regrouping and force accumulation, the Russian army has returned in force to mechanized assault tactics. Today, such assault operations are being recorded across almost the entire Zaporizhia-Konstantinovka axis. Relevant footage has been published by Ukrainian sources, particularly from the areas of Zaporizhia and Rodinsky. These videos show Russian armored columns advancing toward Zaporizhia under artillery fire and FPV drone strikes from Ukrainian forces. Analysis of this footage suggests that a number of strongpoints in this sector have already fallen under Russian control. It is entirely possible that yet another phase of fighting is currently underway for the settlements of Zaporizhia and Suketske. We now shift to the Konstantinovka direction. The situation here is extremely tense and highly dynamic. These past 24 hours can accurately be described as intensely hot. This is yet another sector where the Russian army is actively employing mechanized assaults to rupture Ukrainian defensive lines. Focusing specifically on the Konstantinovka sector, the main developments are unfolding southwest and south of the city itself, in the area located below and south of the current contact line. Today, Russian forces launched an active offensive here as well, committing substantial forces in both manpower and equipment. The immediate objective is to reach the outskirts of the settlements of Dolha Balka and Stepanivka. The Ukrainian side attempted to slow the Russian advance, but geolocated strike data published in open sources provides strong indications that a long fortified defensive belt, effectively a major Ukrainian strongpoint stretching from the H-32 highway towards Stepanivka, has likely fallen under Russian control. This sector contained a dense network of entrenched positions. The pattern and location of strikes along these strongpoints indicate that Russian units have broken through Ukrainian defenses and may have already secured positions in the southwestern part of Stepanivka, specifically west of a system of small reservoirs and lakes. There is a high probability that active fighting for Stepanivka is already underway. This settlement is of critical importance for establishing a forward bridgehead and enabling further assault operations toward Konstantinovka itself. We now move to the Siversk sector of the front, more precisely the Siversk-Sloviansk direction. At present, this is the area exhibiting the highest tempo of offensive operations and the most frequent frontline adjustments. Previously, that role belonged to the Zaporizhia direction. However, after Russian forces reached the Haicha River and approached Huliaipole, the pace there objectively slowed. In contrast, momentum on the Siversk-Lyman and Siversk-Sloviansk axes remains extremely high. This is confirmed by data from multiple cartographic services. For example, maps dated December 20, 2025 show the moment when pro-Ukrainian cartographers officially acknowledged the loss of Siversk by Ukrainian forces. From that point onward, Russian units began advancing westward, methodically pushing through Ukrainian strongpoints. In several sectors, it appears that Russian forces are encountering minimal organized resistance. Ukrainian units are withdrawing toward the next defensive line, while the distance to the next strategically significant objective, the Sloviansk thermal power plant, continues to shrink. At present, it stands at approximately 16 kilometers from forward Russian positions on the southern bank of the Siversky Donets River. In the areas around Dibrova and Ozern, the distance is somewhat shorter. However, the Siversky Donets itself remains a major natural obstacle, so current distance assessments are calculated roughly along a straight line. Offensive operations are ongoing. Further map adjustments are expected tomorrow and the day after. Fighting is currently underway for Bondane, Kromivka, and Reznikivka. In the near future, confirmed information or additional details regarding the Sviatopokrovsk area are likely to emerge. It appears that this is where the main strike is being delivered, using the so-called thousand cuts tactic. As a reminder, the Russian side recently transitioned to this approach, which stretches enemy resources across the front, draws in reserves, and then concentrates force for a decisive blow. In this case, that decisive blow is being directed eastward towards Sloviansk. Turning now to the Kupiansk sector, the situation here has effectively gone quiet. For most of December, this area was highly active, with Ukrainian forces conducting intensive counter-offensive operations and near-daily frontline adjustments. We repeatedly discussed Ukrainian advances aimed at pushing Russian forces off the western bank of the Oskil River. However, the offensive that began in early December has effectively stalled over the past 3 days. Almost no new information is coming from the Kupiansk sector. This may point to several factors. First, the counteroffensive may have exhausted itself. Second, the mounting risks facing Ukrainian forces in the areas of Sumy, Vovchansk, Zaporizhia, Pokrovsk, and Konstantinovka may have forced Ukrainian command to halt the operation, pull units back to their original positions, and begin redeploying available reserves to more critical sectors. Additionally, as we discussed earlier, all negotiation-related activities involving Zelensky, whether in Berlin or Miami, have now concluded. As a result, the immediate need for active counter-offensive actions aimed at creating strong bargaining positions has temporarily disappeared. Those trump cards were previously required and have already been played. At present, the Ukrainian side appears to be focusing once again on force accumulation, likely in preparation for future negotiations. On the Kharkiv direction, the Russian Ministry of Defense and the North Troop Grouping report improved Russian positions in the area of Prilipka, prompting corresponding map adjustments. On the Sumy direction, Russian units continue advancing and have moved beyond the urban boundary of Huliaipole. These changes are confirmed by both pro-Ukrainian sources and neutral cartographers. As previously noted, Russian forces are advancing toward a cluster of settlements along the H07 highway, pushing from both the northwest and northeast. These include Mala Kachkarivka, Novosich, Mariina, Kyanitsia, and Ivolzhanska. At this stage, this line effectively represents the outermost defensive belt protecting the city of Sumy. There is a high probability that intense fighting will begin in this sector in the near future. The objective for Russian forces is to reach the Sumy forest, a large wooded area that can serve as both cover and a staging ground. Under the protection of this forested terrain, Russian units may be able to gradually advance toward the city of Sumy itself. This possibility remains very real at present. That concludes our briefing for today, friends. Thank you for your attention. Subscribe to the channel, support the video with your likes, and until next time.